A man fled crime scene thinking no one suspects him, but this door ring camera caught him red-handed. Police still hasn't found the identity of the man, but they are coming close to bringing justice. The footage police released doesn't show a crime, it doesn't show faces, and it doesn't explain what happened inside that house. But it may be the most important clue investigators have right now. In the early hours of a winter morning in Columbus, Ohio, two parents were found dead in their own home. Their children were still inside, physically unharmed, crying, waiting. Days later, police made a careful decision to release video of a person of interest seen nearby during the narrow window when investigators believe the killings occurred. Not a suspect, not an arrest, just a figure moving through an alley, captured on camera. And that decision raises a bigger question, not just about what happened that night, but about what authorities know, what they don't, and why this case has become so urgent. According to publicly available police information, officers were dispatched to a home in Columbus on December 30th after receiving a wellness check request. The request didn't come from a neighbor reporting noise. It didn't come from a random passerby. It came from people who knew the family well. Spencer Tepe was 37 years old and worked as a dentist. By all accounts shared publicly, he was reliable, punctual, and deeply committed to his job. When he didn't show up for work that morning without any message or explanation, coworkers became concerned. That concern grew when calls to his wife, Monique Tepe, went unanswered as well. Eventually, a friend and coworkers went to the family's home. What they encountered outside was deeply troubling. According to previously reported 911 call details, they could hear the couple's young children crying inside the house, but they were unable to get in. Police were called. When officers entered the home, they found Spencer and Monique deceased upstairs. Authorities later confirmed both had suffered gunshot wounds and were pronounced dead at the scene. The children were found alive and physically unharmed. From the beginning, investigators emphasized that this was an active and complex case. Details were limited, timelines were being established, evidence was still being processed. Then, several days later, police released new information. According to a January 5 news release from the Columbus Division of Police, detectives believe the killings occurred sometime between 2 o'clock and 5 a.m. on December 30th. That 3-hour window became critical, because during that exact time frame, surveillance cameras captured footage of someone walking through an alley near the family's home. The video, shared publicly, shows a person wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt and lighter colored pants. Their hands appear to be in their pockets. Their face is not visible. Police described this individual as a person of interest. That wording matters. A person of interest is not the same as a suspect. It does not mean police are accusing this individual of committing a crime. It means investigators believe the person may have information relevant to the case. Still, the decision to release the footage publicly signals something important. It suggests investigators believe someone in the community may recognize the individual's clothing, walk, or presence in that area at that time. In their statement, police acknowledged the public's concern, calling the incident tragic, and said detectives are working diligently to solve the case. They also confirmed they are actively receiving tips and urged anyone with information to come forward. At the same time, many questions remain unanswered. Investigators have not publicly discussed a motive. They have not indicated whether there were signs of forced entry. They have not confirmed whether the person of interest was seen entering or leaving the home. And they have not released information suggesting the couple was targeted for any specific reason. What is known, according to official statements, is that the killings happened inside the home, upstairs, while the children were present in the residence. That fact alone has intensified public attention, because it raises questions that go beyond this single case. How does something like this happen without immediate detection? What details are investigators choosing not to release, and why? And what role does publicly released footage actually play in moving a case forward? To understand that, it helps to look at how and why police use surveillance footage during active investigations. Law enforcement agencies typically release images or videos only after carefully weighing potential risks. Releasing footage too early can compromise an investigation. Releasing too little can stall it. When footage is shared, it often means detectives believe someone outside law enforcement holds a missing piece of the puzzle. In this case, The footage shows an individual in close proximity to the home during a very specific time window, one that investigators believe aligns with the crime. That timing is not accidental, and it's why this otherwise unremarkable clip has become central to the case. Yet even with the footage, investigators are being careful. They are not naming suspects. They are not making accusations. They are asking for help, and that caution reflects just how sensitive this investigation remains, because behind the headlines and the grainy video, there are still 2 young children whose lives were permanently altered and a community waiting for answers. As investigators work to piece together what happened inside the Tepe home, attention quietly shifted to what didn't happen and what that absence might mean. There were no emergency calls placed from inside the house during the estimated timeframe. There were no public reports of disturbances in the neighborhood overnight. And there was nothing, at least publicly, to suggest the family was expecting danger. According to law enforcement statements, the killings occurred sometime between 2 o'clock and 5 a.m., a period when most of the surrounding neighborhood would have been asleep. That detail alone may help explain why no one noticed anything immediately out of the ordinary. But it also raises difficult questions. Investigators have not said whether the person of interest captured on video was seen approaching the house directly, leaving it, or simply passing through the area. The footage shows movement in an alley near the home, not a doorway, not a vehicle, not an identifiable interaction. That distinction matters, because in an investigation like this, proximity does not automatically equal involvement. Someone could be walking through an alley for many reasons, especially in an urban residential area. This is where the careful language used by police becomes critical. By calling the individual a person of interest, detectives are signaling relevance without making conclusions. It allows them to request public assistance while preserving the integrity of the case. At the same time, releasing the footage serves another purpose. It creates a shared reference point. Someone watching the video might recognize the clothing. Someone might remember seeing a similar figure that night. Someone might recall an unusual detail that seemed insignificant at the time. And in many investigations, those delayed realizations are what move cases forward. Police also confirmed they are receiving tips from the community. However, they have not disclosed how many, nor whether any have significantly advanced the investigation. That silence is not unusual. In high-profile cases, investigators often withhold details intentionally, especially when children are involved and when the risk of misinformation spreading is high. Publicly, the Columbus Division of Police has emphasized patience and diligence. Privately, detectives are likely working through multiple parallel lines of inquiry. Those typically include A-Sense establishing a precise timeline, A-Sense analyzing digital data, A-Sense reviewing surveillance footage beyond what was released, A-Sense examining personal and professional connections, A-Sense and processing forensic evidence collected at the scene. None of those processes happen quickly, and none of them can be rushed without risking mistakes. What adds complexity here is the public visibility of the case. Once footage is released, speculation inevitably follows. Online discussions can move faster than verified information, which is why authorities have repeatedly urged the public to focus on facts, not assumptions. So far, police have not suggested the incident was random. They have not suggested it was targeted. They have not indicated whether the person of interest is believed to be known to the victims. That absence of direction leaves room for multiple possibilities, all of which investigators must consider. Meanwhile, attention has also focused on Spencer Tepe's professional life. He worked as a dentist at a practice owned by Dr. Mark Vauros. According to previously reported information, Vauros told dispatchers it was extremely unusual for Spencer to miss work without notice. That deviation from routine was the first visible sign that something was wrong. In many investigations, routines matter. When someone known for consistency suddenly breaks that pattern, it can help narrow timelines and identify critical moments. In this case, it was that disruption, not an alarm, not a neighbor's call, that led to police being notified. And that detail underscores how quickly a normal morning turned into a criminal investigation. Authorities have not publicly connected Spencer's work to the crime. They have not indicated any professional disputes or concerns. At this stage, those aspects remain unconfirmed and speculative. Which brings the focus back to the home itself. Investigators confirm the killings occurred upstairs. That detail, while limited, suggests the crime unfolded away from the home's main entry points. What remains unclear is whether the individual seen on video ever entered the residence, say, or whether that footage represents only one piece of a much larger surveillance puzzle. Because what the public sees is rarely the full picture. Police typically collect video from multiple sources: nearby homes, businesses, traffic cameras, and private security systems. What gets released is often selected carefully, either because it shows something investigators believe is recognizable, or because it fills a specific gap in public awareness. The alley footage may be exactly that, not definitive evidence, not a conclusion, but a prompt, a signal that investigators believe the answer may lie with someone who doesn't yet realize what they know. And as days pass, the pressure to identify that missing connection increases, because unresolved cases don't just linger in police files. They weigh on families, communities, and the children left behind. Children who, according to authorities, were physically unharmed, but now face a future shaped by loss. And that reality is what makes this investigation more than a headline. It's why every detail, even a shadowed figure in an alley, matters. As the investigation moves forward, one reality becomes increasingly clear: cases like this are rarely solved by a single dramatic revelation. They are solved through accumulation, small details, patterns that only emerge over time, and information that may seem unrelated until it's placed in the right context. That's why investigators have been deliberate in what they release and what they don't. Publicly, police have confirmed the time frame, the location, and the existence of surveillance footage showing a person of interest. But they have not shared how many cameras were reviewed, how far the individual was tracked, or whether additional footage shows movements before or after the alley appearance. Those omissions are intentional. In active investigations, withholding certain details helps prevent false confessions, protects witness integrity, and preserves the ability to verify tips. If too much is revealed too soon, it becomes harder to distinguish genuine information from speculation. What has been emphasized is the importance of community awareness. Investigators are not asking the public to identify a suspect. They are asking for recognition. Someone may remember seeing a person dressed similarly that night. Someone may recall a vehicle idling unusually early in the morning. Someone may have doorbell footage they haven't reviewed closely yet. In many cases, the most valuable tip doesn't come from someone actively watching the news, it comes from someone who suddenly realizes, days later, that something they saw matters. This is where timing becomes critical. As time passes, memories fade, digital recordings are overwritten, people move on, releasing footage early enough to capture attention, but late enough to confirm its relevance, is a careful balance. And the Columbus Division of Police appears to be walking that line. Another factor investigators must consider is motive, or the absence of a clear one. At this point, no motive has been publicly identified. There have been no official statements suggesting robbery, professional conflict, or targeted retaliation. Authorities have not said whether anything was taken from the home. When a motive is unclear, investigators widen their scope. They examine routines, they analyze relationships, they review recent changes in behavior or circumstance. But they also prepare for the possibility that the motive may not fit a familiar pattern. That uncertainty can slow investigations, but it can also prevent tunnel vision, because in cases involving family homes and overnight incidents, assumptions can be misleading. This is also why police have not publicly discussed whether the person of interest is believed to be known to the victims. Making that distinction prematurely could influence witness statements or discourage someone from coming forward. Instead, investigators are letting the evidence guide the narrative, not the other way around. Meanwhile, the presence of the children adds an additional layer of sensitivity. Authorities have been careful not to release details that could affect their privacy or long-term well-being. That restraint limits public information, but it reflects standard practice in cases involving minors. And while the children were physically unharmed, investigators must consider everything from timelines to noise levels to movement within the home, all without public speculation interfering. From the outside, it can feel like progress is slow. But inside an investigation like this, Progress often happens quietly. A tip that rules something out, a timestamp that narrows a window, a camera angle that changes how footage is interpreted. The released video may not be the answer A, but it may lead to the answer, and that's the key distinction. Law enforcement is not asking the public to solve the case. They are asking for assistance in filling in gaps they cannot access alone. Because someone knows something, not necessarily something dramatic, not necessarily something intentional, but something real. And when that missing piece surfaces, the story can change quickly. Until then, investigators continue their work, families continue to wait, and the community remains suspended between what is known and what has yet to be confirmed. As news of the case spread beyond Columbus, public attention followed a familiar pattern. Initial shock, intense focus on limited details, and then, a growing impatience for answers. That reaction is understandable. When a case involves a family, a home, and unanswered questions, it naturally resonates far beyond the immediate community. But for investigators, public attention can be both helpful and challenging. Helpful A because awareness increases the chance that someone recognizes a detail. Challenging A because speculation can distort facts before they are confirmed. This is why police statements in this case have remained measured and precise. The Columbus Division of Police has consistently avoided dramatic language. Instead, they've emphasized cooperation, patience, and factual accuracy. Their messaging has focused on process, not conclusions. And that approach offers insight into where the investigation likely stands. When authorities feel close to an arrest, they often change tone. They may reference narrowed suspect pools, heightened urgency, or specific requests for targeted information. So far, none of that has happened here. Instead, police continue to cast a wide but controlled net. That suggests investigators are still validating timelines, cross-referencing data, and determining how each piece fits, say including the released footage. It's also important to understand what footage like this does not do. It does not establish guilt. It does not define motive. It does not tell the full story. What it does is anchor the investigation to a specific place and time. And once a timeline is anchored, everything else can be tested against it. Alibis, phone records, vehicle movement, digital activity. Each either aligns A or it doesn't. That process takes time, especially when investigators are being careful to avoid errors that could compromise a future prosecution. Meanwhile, the community response has remained largely focused on cooperation rather than speculation. Police have acknowledged receiving tips, and while they haven't confirmed breakthroughs, they've continued to encourage anyone with relevant information to come forward. That ongoing request indicates the case is still open-ended, not stalled, but actively evolving. And that distinction matters. Many high-profile cases appear quiet just before a critical development. Others take longer, progressing through methodical elimination rather than sudden discovery. Both paths are possible here. What remains consistent is the importance of accuracy over speed, because in cases involving irreversible outcomes, investigators only get one chance to get it right. As the days pass, attention will inevitably shift. Other stories will take center stage. But for detectives, the work continues uninterrupted. Day reviewing data, following leads, and waiting for the one detail that changes the direction of the case. And very often, that detail comes from someone who didn't realize they were holding it. Someone who walked by, someone who checked a camera late, someone who remembers something slightly out of place. That's why the released footage matters, not for what it shows, but for what it might trigger: recognition, connection, context. And until that moment arrives, this case remains open, not just as an investigation, but as a reminder of how fragile normalcy can be, and how much effort it takes to restore clarity after it's lost. At this stage, what matters most is not speculation, but understanding. Understanding how investigations actually unfold, understanding why information is released slowly, and understanding that clarity often comes through patience, not pressure. The footage released by police is not a conclusion. It's an invitation for awareness, for attention to detail, and for anyone with relevant information to come forward responsibly. As of now, the case remains active. Investigators continue to review evidence, evaluate tips, and work toward answers that can withstand scrutiny, not just headlines. For the community, and especially for the children at the center of this story, Resolution means more than identifying what happened. It means establishing the truth carefully, accurately, and with accountability. And while not every question has an answer yet, each verified detail brings the picture into sharper focus. If you want to understand how cases like this progress from uncertainty to resolution, how small pieces of information become decisive, the next video breaks down that process step by step, using publicly available examples and expert insight. Because in stories like this, what comes next isn't about shock, it's about clarity.